You're surrounded by flickering candlelight, but your friends across town are partying like it's 1999. They were using the latest cell phones to snap pictures and upload them to the cloud. Meanwhile, you can't even take a picture unless you want to spend 30 minutes arranging the perfect set for your DSLR camera. You hate living in an off-grid commune. Sure, they've got solar panels, but the rest of your life looks like it belongs in a museum. Even your flashlight is battery-powered, because there's no such thing as electricity. Let's go back in time to see how people used to live their lives without the electric grid. Phones, microwaves, vacuum cleaners, or the internet. First things first, if you moved to a farm, you'd probably die.
Ow.
Modern farming techniques wouldn't exist without electricity. Huge tractors powered by combustion engines run on fuel that can be refined because of petroleum engineers who use computer models to predict the best place to drill. That is, of course, after they've surveyed the land with satellite imagery to find the ideal spot. None of that would be possible without electricity. It doesn't even cover all the other modern techniques farmers use, like drip irrigation, which requires pressure and pumps that are powered by electricity. Plus, electricity helps keep track of all those crops. Sensor networks detect when a field needs water, and automated harvesters make sure it's done right away. Today, the country leads the world in corn production, as many of those crops end up as ingredients in highly processed foods. Corn syrup? Anyone? Fortunately, without electricity, Iowa wouldn't lead the nation in anything besides hogs. In fact, pigs would be a lot more important to the U.S. economy. See, pig manure would be a source of energy. Before the days of indoor plumbing, rural folks kept their pigs in pens near their homes. That meant that the pigs were well fed and cozy, but they didn't have anywhere to go to the bathroom, so the residents took care of that for them. After all, they wanted their bacon to be the best tasting and plumpest it could be. If you wanted a cookout, you could barbecue some protein from your own backyard, but don't expect any frozen patties from the store.
Wait.
Without refrigerators, meat stays fresh for a few days max. The same goes for milk. In fact, grocery stores themselves wouldn't exist without electricity.
Ow.
They're not just places to buy food, they're giant temperature-controlled warehouses full of perishables. Meat, produce, and dairy need to stay cool, so they look fresh. Shoppers won't buy soggy vegetables or meat with freezer burn, unless you're moving primeval cheese. Your options would be limited to canned goods and dry staples like pasta, flour, and sugar. Forget about eating out, too. Restaurants rely on refrigeration, cooking equipment, and cleaning technologies that require running water and electricity. The days of five-star meals are over. Without electricity, you'll be eating what you can grow and nothing more. Okay, now that you've survived a trip to the grocery store, you want to get in touch with your friend. You settle in for an evening of writing letters and mailing them. Sure, you could send a telegram, but that's expensive and impersonal. Besides, you have to write in code. You pull out your typewriter to compose a message, but even that is easier said than done. Remember, there's no electricity to power the typewriter, so you have to manually crank the handle to move the carriage. Once you're done writing your letter, you have to find a pen name, since newspapers will be made of paper, meaning they'll be delivered by carrier pigeon. You could track how fast your letter is traveling by monitoring its position with ground stations. But that sounds like a lot of work. Why not just travel at the speed of light and send a text instead? Well, you can't without electricity. Texting and emails are pretty new innovations anyway, but even sending a telegram would be impossible. That's because the telegraph required powerful stations to transmit signals and operators to decode them. On top of that, telegraphs relied on ticking clocks to synchronize their messages. Without electricity to power all those clocks, communications would be hopelessly jumbled. You'd be better off sending smoke signals or sailing your message to the next port, and forget about international calls. Sending a letter would be the most reliable form of communication, but it would also be the slowest. So if you had something to say, you'd have to plan ahead. Your words wouldn't reach your recipient for weeks or even months. After dropping your letter in the mailbox, you decide to head home and curl up on the couch for a good book. But first, you have to finish your homework. There are no overhead lights, so you grab a kerosene lamp to hang over your desk. Then you have to dust off your laptop, which runs on batteries charged by a hand crank. Yes, the future is now, but it's powered by human muscles. Without electricity, every device would run on batteries powered by wind, water, hydropower, solar, or kinetic energy. But while laptops might survive, the internet would be history. Without servers and cables carrying data across continents, the World Wide Web would collapse overnight. All the websites you visit would disappear, along with online videos, streaming music services, and even email. The internet has been around for decades, but it's completely dependent on electricity. If the grid went down, the net would go down with it. No electricity also means no refrigerators, no air conditioning, no fans, no clothes dryers. Hot water would be a luxury. Many appliances would need to be redesigned. An electric iron would become a flat iron heated by a fire. Electric razors would be replaced by straight razors, which would need to be heated in hot water first. And forget about self-driving cars. Electric motors wouldn't exist without electricity. Transportation would go back to horses. Steam engines might stick around a little longer too. The first steam locomotive began chugging around Britain in 1804, but without electricity, large-scale industrialization would be impossible. Cars would burn gasoline or diesel, but they'd have to start with a hand crank. And the aviation industry would change completely. Its planes would either burn those same fuels or rely on steam power. The Wright brothers flew their plane for only 12 seconds in 1903, but the first commercial flight didn't happen until 1914. Without electricity, airplanes would be delayed for decades. It's safe to say we'd be a lot slower to get anywhere. In fact, transportation in general would slow down considerably. Buses, subways, commuter trains, and freight trains would still run, but they'd be powered by diesel or gasoline, and they wouldn't be nearly as efficient. Roads would be a mess, because traffic lights would turn into stop signs. Traffic cops would be needed at every intersection, and bridges would be limited to single lanes, alternating traffic every few minutes. Even ships would be affected. Cruise ships and most cargo vessels run on diesel, but many smaller boats rely on electric motors. Without that power, boating would revert to sail power. And if you thought getting a human-powered boat across a lake would be challenging, try doing it with a full cargo load. Now that you're back home, you finally get to use your favorite innovation, the washing machine. Wait, sorry, you can't wash your clothes without water. Electricity makes water treatment and distribution easy. Pumps move huge amounts of water around the globe. Hydroelectric dams provide clean power by harnessing flowing water. Without electricity, access to safe drinking water would be a challenge. Municipalities could use gravity to distribute water, but pipes would be made of wood or ceramic, making leaks common. Water treatment plants would have to be smaller, producing dirty water that would spread diseases. But in other words, it would be a nightmare. Oh, and don't worry about calling the city to fix your pipes. You can't dial 911 without electricity. Emergency services would still exist, but you'd have to walk to the nearest station to report a crime or request help. They might even tell you to wait until morning, though. Without electricity, there would be no street lighting, meaning police would have to patrol on foot. Without electricity, even the police would be stuck in the dark. Even the richest person couldn't do much without electricity. Their mansions might be bigger, but they wouldn't have air conditioning or elevators. Instead, servants would carry them up and down the stairs. Want to watch TV? Too bad. Would be no broadcasts. Without electricity, the only shows you could watch would be on touring vaudeville circuits or in Nickelodeons. Even a simple clock would be impossible. No quartz crystal oscillators could function without electrical current. Mechanical clocks would rule the day, but they weren't accurate enough to tell the time down to the second. So now you know why. The invention of electricity was one of the most important breakthroughs in human history. It led to the development of countless devices that have made our lives easier, safer, and more convenient. But it's also given us incredible problems. Imagine what would happen if the power grid suddenly went down. Hospitals would collapse, banks would lose customers' life savings, and airports would grind to a halt. From the mundane to the monumental, we depend on electricity more than we realize. It's the backbone of our modern world. So the next time you flip a switch or plug in a device, take a moment to appreciate the incredible power that flows through your fingertips